The Glarnith had crossed 3 star systems to reach Earth, guided by long-range scans that showed the planet to be drenched in what their scientists called dihydrous acid, a compound so corrosive it could eat through Glarnith armor in minutes. To the Glarnith, water was a nightmare, something that had nearly wiped them out during their early evolution. Their entire civilization had risen on a dry, rocky world, where even a light mist was considered a natural disaster. So when their deep space probes transmitted images of Earth, blue oceans, white clouds, and entire continents stitched with rivers, they were certain this planet could not support intelligent life. And yet, strange energy readings and radio signals suggested otherwise. The High Council grew curious. If life had somehow adapted to such hostile conditions, it had to be primitive. No intelligent being could live in open contact with that much acid. With this belief, they sent their ambassador, Commander Travak, to make first contact, expecting to find scattered tribes or desperate survivors sealed in desert shelters. What they found instead was beyond their imagination. The Glarnith ship descended through thick cloud cover above the western coast of what humans called North America. The chosen landing site was a city known as Seattle. Through the ship's viewing panels, Travak saw a grey sky pouring with rain, what he assumed was a toxic storm, yet the surface showed no signs of devastation, no acid-burned craters, no melting structures. The buildings stood tall, windows gleaming with water trails, and then he saw the life forms, not hiding, not running, walking, jogging, laughing, in the rain. His landing pod hissed onto a paved clearing called a park, its legs steaming slightly in the wet ground. Travak stepped out in a sealed environmental suit, his eyes locked on the nearest group of native beings. Humans. They wore no armor, no breathing gear. Their hair and clothes were soaked, yet they moved as if nothing was wrong. One of them, a tall male in a blue jacket and running shoes, paused when he saw the alien. Travak expected fear or aggression. Instead, the human blinked, gave a small smile, and walked up, in the rain, without hesitation. Before Travak could speak, the human reached into a backpack, pulled out a clear plastic bottle filled with bubbling dihydrous acid, and drank it. Right there, in front of him, Travak took a step back, shocked. The human tilted the bottle toward him and offered it as if sharing a drink. "Sparkling water," he said cheerfully. "Lemon flavor. You want some?" Around them, more humans began to gather, some curious, some recording the moment on handheld devices. Children splashed in puddles. A dog shook water from its fur. Not one showed the slightest discomfort. Travak's translator module sputtered, unable to explain what he was seeing. Was it an illusion, some biological miracle, or had the Glarnith misunderstood everything? Back aboard his ship, Travak ordered the data analyzed. Scans confirmed it. The acid was pure water, chemically stable and completely harmless to humans. In fact, it was essential to their survival. Their biology, culture, and technology were all based around it. Earth wasn't just tolerating the substance. It was built on it. Oceans covered most of the surface. The atmosphere carried it. Their food required it. They didn't avoid it. They celebrated it. For the first time in his life, Travak experienced what the Glarnith rarely felt: confusion mixed with awe. He sent an urgent report to the High Council, attaching video evidence of humans swimming, showering, and even diving into vast bodies of liquid. The last clip showed a beach filled with people, cheering as waves crashed over them. He ended the message with a quiet voice log. "We came expecting a wasteland. We found a species dancing in the storm." And as the rain continued to fall, gently on Seattle, a new story began, one the Glarnith would never forget. Earth was not a dead world. It was alive, powerful, and its people unshaken by what the universe feared most. Back on the Glarnith mothership orbiting Earth, confusion had turned into alarm. The data coming in from the surface made no logical sense to the scientists. They had watched, in disbelief, as humans, walked through rain without protection, swam in massive basins of liquid, and even sprayed each other for fun. Some of the footage showed humans sliding down plastic tubes into deep pools of water while laughing. One clip had gone viral across Glarneth networks. It showed a woman lying calmly in a bathtub full of water, eyes closed, candles lit around her. The scientists were horrified. Was she under attack? Was this torture? But the sensors said otherwise. Her vital signs were calm. She was relaxing. The Glarneth Research Division, known for its strict logic and caution, quickly began forming theories. Perhaps the footage was fake. Maybe it was a carefully constructed illusion to appear strong. It could be that only a small percentage of humans were immune to the acid and the others lived underground. Determined to know the truth, they decided on a controlled experiment. They sent an invitation to Earth's leaders to send a few human volunteers aboard their ship. To the Glarneth's surprise, the humans agreed without hesitation, even seemed excited. When the humans arrived on the ship, led by a cheerful woman named Dr. Lena Carter and two of her colleagues, the Glarneth welcomed them with ceremonial respect, though deep down, they were nervous. The guests looked casual, even joking as they walked the sterile metallic corridors. The test area was prepared with utmost caution. A sealed chamber equipped with automated misting nozzles, releasing purified water vapor in controlled amounts. For the Glarneth, stepping into that room would be fatal. Their skin would blister within minutes. The scientists assumed that even the bravest humans would show signs of pain, perhaps mild distress at least. But as the chamber doors slid open and the mist began to spray, the human reaction left everyone speechless. Dr. Lena stretched her arms, smiled wide, and said, "Feels like a spa." One of her teammates tilted his head back, letting the mist hit his face, and added, "Reminds me of hiking in the mountains." The third human began whistling a tune, completely at ease. The command deck, watching through dozens of live monitors, went silent. Glarneth officers leaned in, stunned. How could these beings treat acid exposure like a comfort ritual? The misting intensity was increased slightly, still no reaction. The humans just stood there, chatting, even laughing. One of them pulled a metal can from their bag, twisted it open with a fizzing sound, and took a long sip. Tiny bubbles danced in the clear liquid inside. Then, with a grin, he held the can up toward the nearest camera and said, "Sparkling water. Anyone want a taste?" On the bridge, a cup fell from an officer's hand. Another backed away from the console, as if the screen might spray him. Commander Travak stared at the image, unsure whether to be terrified or impressed. The scientists began whispering frantically. This wasn't an illusion. The readings were consistent. The water was real, and the humans were not just immune. They enjoyed it. Their biology didn't resist water. It welcomed it. The realization hit the Glarneth like a thunderbolt. Their entire understanding of life had been based on fear of water. They had built suits, cities, even religions around avoiding it. But these creatures, they had mastered it. Later, as the humans were offered refreshments in the conference chamber, carefully sealed away from any water, Travak approached Dr. Lena and asked the question now echoing through every Glarneth mind. "How do your people survive in such an environment?" She smiled, wiping a drop of water from her brow with a towel. "Simple," she replied. "We're made for it. We're mostly water ourselves." The room went silent again. That night, across the Glarneth fleet, one sentence kept replaying in every officer's mind. What else can these humans do that we fear? The Glarneth research vessel had become a storm of confusion and quiet panic. Everything they had witnessed on Earth went against centuries of scientific knowledge. Their understanding of dihydrous acid, what humans casually called water, was that it was dangerously corrosive, especially to carbon-based life. On their own planet, just one drop of it could destroy the outer skin of most organisms. But the more footage they collected from Earth, the more their fears twisted into disbelief. Humans weren't hiding from water. They lived in it, bathed in it, even played with it. Entire areas were built around large pools where families laughed and splashed for what appeared to be entertainment. Rivers, oceans, lakes. These weren't treated as hazards. They were seen as natural, even beautiful. The Glarnith High Council declared an emergency study. A scientific delegation was sent to perform direct observation. Surely this had to be a case of filtered illusions or a rare evolutionary adaptation in only a few humans. To be sure, they invited a small group of Earth's representatives aboard the Glarnith research ship under the guise of diplomacy, but the real plan was far more daring. They had built a special testing chamber, carefully sealed and equipped, to release controlled amounts of misted water. They believed this would finally expose the truth. When the three humans stepped onto the Glarnith ship, they showed no hesitation. Their leader, Dr. Lena Carter, seemed calm and curious, asking polite questions about the ship's construction and artificial gravity. Her two companions, one an ex-military survivalist and the other a young environmental scientist, looked equally relaxed. The Glarnith, watching from behind reinforced glass and protective barriers, felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Would the humans collapse? Would their skin blister? Or would they scream as the acid mist touched them? The moment arrived. The humans were guided into the chamber and the mist system activated. Soft clouds of fine, pure water began to drift across the room. The Glarnith held their breath. The response from the humans was instant, but not what anyone expected. Dr. Lena tilted her head back and smiled. "Feels like a spa," she said, brushing her hair out of her eyes. Her teammate stretched his arms, saying, "Just like those foggy mornings back home." The younger one even spun in a slow circle, arms open, clearly enjoying the sensation. Inside the command center, the Glarnith scientists froze. This was impossible. One of them double-checked. The readings. Yes, it was real water. No protective gear, no burns, no panic. In fact, their vital signs showed improved relaxation. The chamber was intensified. The mist thickened. Still, no negative reaction. The humans began to casually chat with each other about the weather on Earth, as if this was a picnic. Then, the moment that would become a symbol of interstellar shock, the ex-military human pulled out a small silver can, cracked it open with a hiss, and took a long drink. "Sparkling water," he said with a satisfied sigh. Then he turned to the camera feed and offered the can with a grin. "Want some?" The entire command deck went silent. One Glarnith officer stumbled backward. Another whispered, "They drink it." Commander Travak stood stiffly, trying to process the sight. This wasn't an illusion. This was real. And worse, or perhaps more incredible, they liked it. Later, as the mist chamber was shut down and the humans exited without a scratch, the data was analyzed again and again. There was no mistake. Not only could humans tolerate water, they required it to live. Their entire physiology was based on it. Their muscles, organs, even their blood contained it. In the following hours, more clips were played of humans swimming across vast oceans, racing in the rain, sailing boats into storms, even freezing water into cubes for their drinks. Every new discovery made the Glarnith realize just how wrong they had been. That night, the High Council received a simple report from Commander Travak. "The humans do not fear the acid. They thrive in it. We must rethink everything." And, in the heart of space, aboard a ship filled with stunned silence, one truth echoed louder than any data. The species they had thought weak was built of the very element they feared most. The Glarnith were not used to being wrong. Their scientists had mapped thousands of planets, catalogued life forms across galaxies, and built knowledge systems that rarely failed them. But after watching humans walk, dance, and swim in what they believed was deadly acid, the Glarnith leadership demanded answers. It was not just confusion anymore. It was a crisis of belief. The High Council sent a formal request to Earth's delegation, asking for a full explanation of human interaction with water. In response, humanity did something unexpected. They didn't send complex data files or scientific formulas. Instead, they sent a presentation, part education, part culture, and part shock therapy for the Glarneth. It began with images of Earth, from space, the deep blue oceans, the white clouds, the rivers carving through green landscapes. A narrator spoke calmly, explaining how water covered over 70% of Earth's surface and how life on the planet had evolved in balance with it. The presentation moved through scenes of daily life, families swimming in pools, children jumping into lakes, people dancing in the rain, and others sitting in hot tubs during snowstorms. The Glarneth watched in disbelief as a human placed thin blades on their feet and glided across a frozen lake. One officer gasped when a child aimed a brightly coloured plastic tube and squirted water at his brother, causing both of them to laugh uncontrollably. That clip alone was transmitted across Glarneth communication networks, quickly becoming a viral phenomenon. Some saw it as bravery, others thought it had to be a special effect, but most just stared, confused and amazed. The lesson continued with a segment on survival. A retired human soldier, introduced as a Navy SEAL, appeared on screen. With a calm and steady voice, he told the story of a mission gone wrong, how he had been stranded alone at sea for 3 days. His survival, he explained, had depended on collecting rainwater in a small plastic sheet and drinking it to stay alive. It tasted clean, he said, like hope. In the Glarneth audience, a wave of shock rippled through the room. One scientist dropped his datapad, another quietly fainted. A few simply sat with wide, unblinking eyes. On their homeworld, even one drop of rain could cause skin damage. The idea of catching it and drinking it was unthinkable. Yet here was a human, smiling as he remembered the taste. The presentation shifted to art, music, and stories, famous ocean paintings, songs about rain, and myths that spoke of rivers as sacred places. A hologram displayed a traditional wedding ceremony where the couple poured water over their hands as a blessing. The Glarneth watched it all, silent and overwhelmed. Finally, the last scene showed a group of astronauts aboard Earth's space station, floating in zero gravity. One of them released a floating ball of water, which danced in midair like a shimmering jewel. He gently poked it with his finger, laughing as it bounced away. As the lights returned to the Glarneth chamber, questions flooded in. How had humans not only survived water, but made it beautiful? The humans, in turn, asked something just as important. They wanted to understand the Glarneth fear. Slowly, the truth came out. The Glarneth had evolved on a planet called Erathis, where the atmosphere reacted with surface water to form a highly acidic compound. Their oceans were pools of danger, their rain poisonous, and their earliest ancestors had lived underground to escape the deadly touch of water. To them, water was not life, it was death. They had never imagined it could be anything else. This misunderstanding had shaped their entire worldview. Now, faced with the reality of Earth and its people, they had to accept that water was not universal in danger, only in presence. That day, a bridge was formed between two civilizations, not with weapons or politics, but with a liquid both feared and loved. And somewhere aboard the Glarneth vessel, a child's laugh echoed again and again as aliens replayed the water gun video and slowly, cautiously began to smile. It began with a distress signal from the Glarneth colony on Velmara 6, a lush moon, recently terraformed but still rich with natural lakes and moisture-heavy air. The colony had been designed with sealed walkways, elevated structures, and water-repellent barriers, all built to avoid direct contact with the abundant surface water. But the Drekkal, a hostile species known for exploiting weaknesses in enemy biology, had studied the Glarneth well. They launched a surprise attack during the rainy season, flooding the lowland settlements with redirected rivers and triggering artificial storms. With water levels rising and no way to safely move through the flooded areas, the Glarnith found themselves trapped, cut off, helpless, and terrified. Their military vehicles stalled in shallow water. Their soldiers froze at the sight of puddles, and their rescue drones failed under damp conditions. Panic spread across the colony and echoed in the High Council chambers. The fear of water, once a cultural memory, had become a deadly threat again. But then came an offer Earth had quietly prepared for. Humanity had been watching, listening, waiting for a moment when they could prove not only their friendship, but their unique strength. When the call came, they answered without hesitation. Within hours, a specialized team was launched from a joint Earth-Glarnith alliance ship orbiting Velmara 6. The team was unlike anything the Glarnith had ever seen. Clad in sleek, water-resistant suits, equipped with gear built for aquatic survival, and supported by drones that could alter weather patterns and purify water mid-flight, the human unit moved fast. They were not afraid. They were trained in it. Some called them divers. Others called them engineers. But to the Glarnith soldiers who watched from the high ridges and dry towers, these humans seemed like legends brought to life. As the human team entered the flooded colony, they swam, with smooth, practiced motions, communicating with hand signals and small voice comms. One carried a portable filtration system on his back, turning murky pools into clear water. Another used drones to raise temporary platforms and deliver supplies. But the moment that burned itself into Glarnith history came when a human engineer, calm and quiet, walked waist-deep into what the Glarnith still called liquid death, without flinching. Around him, other humans moved confidently, setting up barriers, pulling survivors from buildings, and guiding frightened Glarnith colonists to safety. One Glarnith officer, watching from a raised platform with wide, trembling eyes, whispered a word that quickly spread among his troops: Liquid Walker. It was not a title born from fear, but from awe. Hours passed, then a full day. The skies above Velmara 6 began to clear, not by luck, but through human weather drones dispersing the storm systems. Rescue operations completed with every colonist accounted for. Human engineers stayed behind to teach Glarnith scientists how to build filtration systems, waterproof their electronics, and better understand how to live around water instead of always fearing it. As the sun broke through the clouds, shining across the still wet terrain, a group of Glarnith children stepped carefully into the shallow edge of a stream, guided by one of the human rescuers. It was the first time in recorded Glarnith history that children stood in water and smiled. The mission became known across galaxies as the Velmara Miracle, but for the Glarnith, it was something greater. It was a turning point. Not only had humans saved their people, but they had shown them a different way of thinking, courage in the face of ancient fear. That night, aboard the returning ship, Glarnith soldiers gathered around the humans, asking questions, showing respect, and sharing food. No longer just allies, they saw humanity as something rare, teachers of strength through understanding. And when one young Glarnith cadet asked how the humans had trained for such terrifying conditions, a quiet chuckle came from the back of the group. The human engineer smiled and said, "It's just water. You learn to move with it, not against it." The Glarnith nodded slowly, the words sinking in like stones into still water. The halls of the United Galactic Council had never seen such a gathering. Delegates from over 50 star systems sat in silence as the Glarnith Supreme Speaker entered, not with pride or the usual stiff formal greetings, but with quiet humility. Behind him walked the Earth Ambassador, a woman named Liana Voss, holding a simple glass filled with clear water. That small detail was enough to send a ripple of emotion through the crowd. For many species, water was just a substance, sometimes useful, sometimes dangerous. But for the Glarnith, it had always been fear itself. And yet, here stood their leaders, walking beside a human who carried it without fear, without armor. The crisis on Velmara 6 had changed everything. The bravery and skill of the human rescue team had not only saved lives but opened the eyes of an entire civilization. The Glarnith had finally accepted that water was not an enemy to all. To humans, it was life, strength, and even art. This shift in thinking led to something historic, a new alliance that would connect two species who had once misunderstood each other entirely. The Treaty of the Tides was not just words on paper, it was a symbol of change. In the heart of the council chamber, under a transparent dome showing the stars above, the Glarnith speaker placed his seal beside Earth's. With that, humans were officially named Aquakin, a title reserved for beings with mastery over the element the Glarnith had feared for generations. What followed was even more surprising. Across the galaxy, cultures began to shift. Human, water traditions, once seen as strange or reckless, suddenly became valuable. Paintings of ocean waves were displayed in Glarnith museums. Holographic recordings of synchronized swimming were played in schools. Even human music inspired by rainstorms or ocean winds became part of interstellar broadcasts. Some Glarnith cities began building new structures that allowed for controlled water flows, fountains, and even misted parks, all guided by human architects. Where fear once ruled, fascination had taken root. Humanity, in turn, shared their knowledge with care and respect. They offered training in aquatic survival and introduced new methods for climate control and eco-balancing on planets struggling with weather chaos. Terraforming teams from Earth became the top experts in stabilizing planets with excess moisture or unpredictable seasons. Slowly, humans became more than allies. They became teachers, problem solvers, and even symbols of hope. No longer seen as reckless life forms who had adapted to horror, they were admired for their ability to live in harmony with something others ran from. The Glarnith began to rewrite parts of their cultural history, including new stories of bravery, where water was no longer the villain, but the test of a true warrior. In one such tale, based on real events, a Glarnith child steps into a stream guided by a human, learning not only how to stand, but how to float. The final moment of the treaty ceremony was simple but unforgettable. As the agreement was read aloud in every major galactic language, Ambassador Liana Voss stepped forward to speak. Her words were calm but firm. May this be the start of unity built not on fear, but on understanding. Then she lifted the glass of water, looked around the chamber filled with species from across the stars, and slowly drank it. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then, without warning, applause began. Soft at first, then building into a wave that filled the room with a sound never before heard in the council. Respect earned not through power, but through peace and courage. The Glarnith rose to their feet first. One by one, the rest followed. And so, Earth took its place not as a planet of war or dominance, but as a home to a species who turned danger into comfort, fear into strength, and water into something sacred. The stars would remember them not just as survivors, but as the liquid walkers, the ones who taught the galaxy how to walk through storms and find beauty within them.